and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we have a very special holiday episode discussing the 1978 Star Wars Holiday Special, which Lucasfilm has tried to bury from the very beginning. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, editor of the upcoming Young Captain Nemo, Quest for the Nautilus, and with me is attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
Hello.
Hello. We did not plan to do this episode. We were enjoying Star Wars this week. We're not doing a Star Wars episode, but we suddenly realized, you know what we should do? We should do an episode on the Star Wars Holiday Special, which I don't think that you had ever actually seen. So can you give me your opening impression of the Star Wars Holiday Special? Like, were you aware of it in 1978? I'm really curious about the difference between then and now.
Well, so in 1978, I was very small, so I don't think I was aware of it. But I've been aware of it since then, and I thought I had seen it, but having seen it now, I'm pretty sure I had not seen it, or if I did, then I had a memory scrub of some kind because I didn't remember. It is really, really not good, and I feel like I would have remembered that. Because in my mind, I'm just like, oh, it's that cheesy special people talk about. Yeah, it's cheesy, like a lot of specials. No, it's not cheesy. It's bad. It's not good at all. It's way more than cheesy. So that is my initial impression.
That's your opening gambit. Okay, this the special came out in November of 1970, November 17th, 1978, shortly before Thanksgiving. I was 7 years old in November of 1978. And so I actually remember seeing this special, which because, you know, Wonder Woman and the Hulk did not show on that night. They were preempted by CBS so that everybody could watch the Star Wars Holiday Special. This thing appeared one time, 2 hours on CBS, which was one of the three major networks at the time. There were not a lot of options. And it was never ever seen again because when people showed it, they immediately realized, you know, nobody was ever going to watch this again. And I think you said it exactly right. A lot of things are considered bad, right? The Paul Lynde Halloween special, which we watched, we talked about how a lot of the jokes were lame and, you know, and it dragged in some places, and that was considered bad. That is on a whole nother side of the earth from how poorly made this particular special is. It kind of blows the mind, and I you know, so let's get into it with some specificity, so we're not just dumping on it without being specific. I really hate
it explains a lot. Just I'm looking at the IMDb notes. It explains a lot that Bruce Vilanch says he was using cocaine heavily while working on writing this special, so that explains quite a bit because it's just
so Vilanch is a hilarious guy. He's a very interesting guy, and he's like the head writer on this special. But what's crazy is, yeah, but I mean, you know, the writers on Alf were using a lot of cocaine, and they were very funny. Vilanch is a funny guy. The main problem with this special, when you look at it without knowing like what went into it, it is very briefly to explain what's going on. It's a 2-hour telefilm, and this is the story generally. The main characters of Star Wars are all working to get Chewbacca back to the planet of Kashyyyk so that they can celebrate Wookiee Christmas, basically, you know, and you have a lot of stuff with Harrison Ford himself playing Han Solo in a set of the Millennium Falcon, you know, and they're fighting against stock footage of TIE fighters and stuff and Star Destroyers, and saying, "Don't worry, Chewie, we're going to get you home in time for Wookiee Thanksgiving," and all along,
which they call Life Day.
And the rest of it, and those are very small bits. You know, Harrison Ford shows up more than the rest of the cast, which is mind-boggling to me. Even Chewbacca doesn't show up very much. What mainly this is the story of Chewbacca's family back on the Wookiee planet as they worry about whether Chewbacca is going to get home because he's part of the Rebel Alliance, and they deal with Nazi-like stormtroopers and Imperial officers who are, you know, searching the neighborhood.
And they're Wookiees, so they don't speak at all, and yet we spend probably 2/3 of this film watching them have conversations. So the
Have
conversations
conversations.
are entirely made up of sound effects that were created from recordings of bears and lions at a game farm in Washington State,
Yes.
and then a baby
You're
bear at San
describing the
Diego
sound of
Zoo.
Chewbacca.
Right.
You're
But
describing
I'm
the
saying
speaking
they're
of
all
Wookiees,
doing
yeah.
this.
Yes.
Well, Chewbacca, I feel like, well, I don't know, maybe if it was an hour and a half of Chewbacca doing, I would be annoyed too. But for sure, it's very annoying. Like, I almost feel like if it was just mime, if it was just
Mhm.
a silent film, it would have been much more
Like
interesting. But
Shield and Yarnell, who
yeah,
existed at the time and did entire hour-long specials with no dialogue.
right,
Uh,
or, sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the French mime.
Marcel Marceau?
Marcel Marceau, yeah. Yeah, so you could do something like that, that would have been fine, but the sound effects make it so irritating, and plus it's not interesting stuff that they're doing. Like, they're just she's cooking, which I guess makes sense because it's a holiday, but the wife is just cooking the whole day, and the kid is watching things on his iPad. On the
Yes.
1978 equivalent of an iPad, which now that I'm thinking about it is actually quite clever that like it was so natural for me to see him looking at this little device
Yes.
because that's what our kids do all the time now. But that's actually not a thing that people did in 1978. Even Atari wasn't a thing yet in 1978, I don't think.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
there's extra stuff that's thrown in, but I won't get into that right now. Mainly, the thing to be aware of when you're thinking about whether you're gonna watch this is that really literally
Is that don't.
most of it is the Wookiees talking to one another and puttering around a sort of sitcom set of a big Tarzan-style treehouse. And here's the thing, nobody will fess up to this being their idea, but Bruce Vilanch, who has no reason to lie about this, says that this was all Lucas's idea. That Lucas said, "I wanna have a very non-ironic thing where it's gonna be a bunch of Wookiees preparing for Chewbacca to come home." And everybody knew, and Bruce Vilanch says that when he heard that pitch, he thought that was a terrible idea, and George Lucas was offended that he thought it was a terrible idea.
But once George Lucas saw what they actually did, he banned it from the earth.
Yes.
Like, he was like, I'm gonna you cannot show it anywhere else that hasn't already been showed, which is like US and Canada. He's like, if anywhere else, it will not be shown, and I'm gonna buy up as many of them I can of them as masters as I can and destroy them.
Yes. And Lucas says when he was interviewed most recently, he said, "Oh, I don't remember much, but if I recall, I was busy with Empire, getting ready for Empire, and I think some variety show guys did that. I don't know anything about it." But according to Bruce Vilanch, the fatal flaw, which is that you're going to spend time with a bunch of moaning bears, is Lucas's idea. So that happens, and so Bruce Vilanch set out. There were two directors, by the way, but Bruce Vilanch set out to go. Okay, so what can I do? And he fills it up with a bunch of comedy. Now, this is where Bruce Vilanch falls flat because the comedy is also extraordinarily poor, even in by the standards of an era when you would typically have variety shows, and on variety shows, magic guys come on, and then a singer comes on, and then there's a little skit, and there's another thing, and all of that humor would be extraordinarily mild and inoffensive, and yada yada. Nothing lands in this film. It's amazing to me how hard you can work to make sure that literally none of your humor
Yeah, even
lands.
people who are usually pretty funny, like Harvey Korman and
Like
B.
Harvey
Arthur,
Korman. Tell
are
me, tell
just
us who
not funny.
Harvey Korman plays, because Harvey Korman plays three different characters in here. Let's see if we can remember
Well, the
all of
most
them.
memorable one, of course, is that he plays this television personality, cooking personality, who is an alien. Well, I mean, I guess they're all aliens, but
Hmm.
an alien to me, like, I've never seen this particular kind of creature. Female creature in, what is it, purple face? I don't know.
Yeah.
And then with like big purple hair, and we as she is cooking, it's revealed that she actually has at least 6 arms, probably 6 arms.
Yes.
And she's just telling the viewer how to cook, but it's just really, really, really bad. Like, she's just going, mix and whip and mix and she says that a lot, too many times.
Well, the problem is that all of these bits go on way too long.
Yeah,
You really
that's
get
right.
the that would have
Yeah,
been
you
a
said
good
when we were
gag maybe for like half, like
right.
30 or 45 seconds
You
maybe.
said when we were watching it that that if it seemed like they'd had 30 minutes of content, but then they had to stretch it into 2 hours or, an hour and
Yeah,
an hour and, like an hour and 37 minutes, I think is what it
that's
runs
right.
without the commercials. So, yeah, so we've got that character who I'm looking at the IMDb, says it's called Chef Gourmanda.
Right.
You've got
That
an
character only works in the '70s, by the way, because she's patterned after Julia Child. If you haven't
well,
watched a lot of
she
Julia
kind of
Child,
works, but the thing is, I mean, but now, like, we have a lot of cooking shows. We have Rachel Ray and stuff. It's just not
that's true.
they're just not funny, whatever. But, there's another character called Krellman and another character called the, Amorphian Instructor. I'm gonna let you describe those guys because
Well, there's the one, oh god, yeah, there's one that's basically a commercial, an infomercial essentially. That's the child Lumpy, the child Wookie watches an infomercial, and it's for this device that does all kinds of different things, basically like voice modulation and stuff. I don't know. It was impossible to watch, and I wound up fast forwarding through the bit, but it was Harvey Korman doing a lot of bits involving slowing down and speeding up, but it's just tiresome. So, a good example of something that already is not very funny when it's like 30 seconds long, but that goes on for minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes. And then Harvey Korman also shows up in a bit that would have been a decent enough sketch, again, at a couple of minutes, where he shows up at the Mos Eisley Cantina and he's in love with B. Arthur, who runs the Mos Eisley Cantina. Now, here's the wild thing about this: the Mos Eisley Cantina bit opens with a bumper, and you got to imagine Bruce Vilanch writing this, and the bumper says, "Everybody in the Empire is instructed to," because the Empire are like Big Brother meets Nazis, basically. So in the universe of this show, they're always like broadcasting video messages that you, as a citizen, are forced to watch for educational purposes. And this one's like, we broadcast this to let you know what life is like on Tatooine, so that you might feel better about yourself and no judgment or whatever. And then they switch to watching B. Arthur be the owner of this bar in Tatooine, and then she does a musical number.
eventually, but first we have the musicians from Mos Eisley
Yeah,
Cantina,
yeah, the
and
Cantina
they're
Band, yeah.
the poor actors were passing out because they didn't have enough oxygen coming to them, so they ended up having to have oxygen tanks
Oh
so
my
that they
god.
could breathe. I mention a funny thing that I read. It says that according to Carrie Fisher, George Lucas gave her a copy of the special as a gift for recording the DVD commentary for Star Wars Episode 4, and
Oh.
so she said that she played it at parties when she wanted her guests to leave. I thought that was really funny.
I honestly, we had a party once. You and I had a party, and a friend of ours had brought a copy of this on like VHS because
I guess that's
this
why I
was.
thought I had seen it, because I knew I had seen some
Oh
part of
no,
it.
Ernie started playing it, and we watched like half an hour of it, and he's like trying to explain it because he was super excited. He was like, "Look, Art Carney's doing his like honeymooners bit," and then people like started wandering into the kitchen, and finally we just gave up and popped it out. Nobody could bear to
So it
watch this
does
whole
work.
thing.
Okay.
Yes, it is truly awful. And I feel terrible because people got paid for doing this. You get paid to make a TV special. Maybe you can pay for another year of college for your kid. I understand, but
So we
good
should have
grief.
invited we should have invited Ernie Klein to join us on this on
Yeah,
this a little mini podcast. He could
yeah,
defend it.
yeah. He's a busier man now than he
Yeah,
was
he is a little
back
bit.
when he had back when he had time to just wander the streets of Austin with copies of the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Forcing
But
it on people.
but good grief, yeah, nobody could stand to watch it because it's so. The main thing that's torture about it is how it is just so unbearably slow. It is unbelievable. I know we said that before, but I'm hitting it again because it's astonishing how things just kind of go on forever.
Yeah, focus
Okay,
on
what
the
else
word
happened?
unbearable. Unbearable is the word.
So
We really couldn't. I was falling asleep. You kept forwarding through parts.
yes, okay, Diane Carroll, the always
Uh,
lovely,
that's
beautiful
the
Diane
yeah.
Carroll.
Yeah,
This is
no.
easily the most disturbing piece in this whole,
It
again,
which is saying a
family
lot.
special. Yeah. Explain to me what happens with Diane
Oh my
Carroll.
god. So, first of all, I've gotta back up to say that there is what I consider to be a really annoying and just hard to watch character of the grandfather, the father of Chewbacca, I guess
It's
he
called
is.
Itchy. Just
His
so we know.
Itchy's already that's bad. That's a bad name. And then the actual the way he's done it's really strange where his lower lip just extends way up over his upper lip like just out and up. So that it's just a very I don't like it's a very unattractive character number 1.
Yeah,
So
he's difficult
then
to look at. Yeah.
yeah. So then he is the store owner guy who is played by Art Carney comes by and says, "Hey, I've got something I want to share with you. You're going to love this." And it's basically what we would now and again, thinking to the fact that this is 1978 and this technology is actually quite prescient, it's like because it really is VR. I mean, it's just virtual reality technology is what he's looking at. So he's got this VR technology that goes a step further and supposedly reads your fantasy and creates it. So it's the next step. It's artificial intelligence, and so apparently for some reason this Wookiee's fantasy is Diane Carroll. So he's gonna be like, and she's beautiful. No, don't get me wrong. I mean, she's super hot. But why would a Wookiee's fantasy be this human? Whatever. Anyway, so she starts saying all this really like sexy stuff. It's like supposed to be this little softcore porn scene, but she's saying it to the grandpa Wookie who's getting super excited in his chair. It's disgusting. It's
Yeah.
so gross. So she's saying like, I'm your pleasure, I'm your fantasy, I'm blah blah blah, and she's just all sexy. And then she sings a sexy song, and then they have all the fun little 70s kaleidoscope colorful visual effects.
Oh my god.
And
Yeah.
that would have been fine if it had just been somehow on its own. Like I don't even know how you would manage to incorporate it into the story. But for him to be watching it and having his own little personal like peep show in the living room, where his kid like grandson is right across the room and he's like getting all excited and jumping up. Ugh, it was just nasty.
It's gross, and I can't figure out, like, this feels like this feels like Bruce Vilanch kind of basically pulling our leg, where he's like, "I'm gonna see if I can do this in a family special." Nobody's gonna get that's what's weird is nobody's gonna get this gag, the kids are not going to get it, and they're gonna be bored by it, and the adults are gonna be uncomfortable with it. It's just
Mhm.
very strange that it's in here. So that's a thing that happens. There's a long, long, long bit that's like a Cirque du Soleil hologram that they watch.
Which
Uh,
again, this is what I'm saying. There are these little parts that you'll be like, okay, that I can see where that fits in a variety show, except that we can't really see what they're doing because it's the same technology as they use for the chessboard. So it's these little characters that are entertaining they're entertaining Lumpy.
yeah,
And but what we're seeing giant Lumpy and then these tiny little chess characters dancing around and doing and juggling and doing all kinds of things and but they're small because we're seeing it we're his size basically. And I don't know
yes.
why they didn't just bother to get him out of the image and then actually show us this act like if we were just seeing it
See, here's
regular.
what's crazy, just to break in for just a moment. What they could have done and gotten just as many rating was had a variety special at the Venetian or whatever exists in 78. Sorry, Caesars. And it could have had a variety special hosted by Carrie Fisher, and they could have had guests like Jefferson Starship and Diane Carroll come on and do a bit. And they could
Well,
have had
that
short
already
skits.
exists and it's called the Muppet Show. The Muppet Show actually did have some
Well, that's
Star
true.
Wars characters and that worked out just fine. You
Yeah.
know,
No, that's true.
it's not needed.
I'm just saying this is somewhere along the way, I've been thinking about this a lot because I'm in the middle of rewrites on a novel right now. And one thing that you only are able to do after you write the first draft of something is to look at something and go, okay, where have we gone off track that we need to just cut like huge sections or get rid of some stuff because we're going in the wrong direction? And where do we have to pull this out and just like rearrange a whole bunch of stuff and deal with the problem of how do we fill in the spaces that we ripped out? And with this, they never appear to have had that conversation. Who knows? Maybe they did, but they never appear to have had the conversation and said, you know what, this whole thing with the family is not working. We need mimes or we need to just ditch this entirely and switch it to like a family on Tatooine, who like speak English or whatever. And that's astonishing because then you've got that terrible fatal flaw, and then Bruce Vilanch adding in skits that are not very good. Art Carney doing his best, and Art Carney, I'm sorry, plays the guy who speaks English on the Wiki Planet. He's a
Like the
trader.
shopkeeper.
He
Yeah,
sells
trader,
stuff,
yeah.
yeah, and Trader Dan, and he's also the one who is the only one who's able to inject any drama or any suspense or anything into it, because he's the one who's kind of trying to protect them from the Nazis who come around looking for a Chewbacca. Which is funny because you think about Art Carney, and there's no way that Art Carney had the slightest interest in Star Wars. Art Carney is the best thing here. B. Arthur, Jesus Christ, her scene, which is really just a skit to get to her song, which is a song set to the tune of the Cantina Band song. That skit goes on forever and ever and ever. You watch enough dialogue, and then you start forwarding, and then you realize, oh my God, they're still doing the setup
Yeah.
for this song. Yeah.
That's painful. Painful,
Yes.
painful.
Is there
No,
anything we're forgetting?
well, so yeah, so you've got everybody's in this, every single character that we love pretty much is in this piece, but they're stuffed in. So you've got Harrison Ford and Chewbacca. The premise is that Harrison Ford and Chewbacca have not been able to get back to the planet. So yeah, it's Life Day, but the family's worrying about where they are, as you said at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so we do cut back and forth to a few kind of action-ish scenes with Harrison Ford and Chewbacca, just, controlling things in the ship, and like,
Hmm.
just that kind of thing. So there's that. So I guess that's, you said about drama. I suppose there's a little bit of drama there, but not really, because you don't know why. I wasn't really clear on why they were having so much trouble getting back to the planet. Like, who are they involved with? I don't know if you caught that. If you had a
You mean
better
Han and
and
Han
Chewie.
and Chewbacca?
Yeah.
Well, they're rebels. Everybody knows the Millennium Falcon is a rebel ship.
Right. So
So
they're just
yeah,
dodging the Empire.
and on the
Okay.
Wookiee planet, the stormtroopers and the Imperial guys are looking for rebels who are coming back. And
Hmm.
so the only thing that's remotely this movie actually plays a lot with a notion that we've never ever seen before, which is stormtroopers hunting household to household for rebels, like you might look for, the French Resistance
Or like you said, yeah,
or
it was not like
or
Nazis. Yeah.
Jews or whatever. Yeah, it's all
Right.
Nazi stuff. The whole thing is Nazi stuff, uh, and that's how Art Carney, a World War II vet and who's been in 1,000 movies and TV shows, is able to like invest it with some reality. Is okay. I know how to play this scene. I've done scenes where, yeah, the Nazis are looking for somebody. We have a radio in the bookshelf that we're hiding and all that stuff. Um, that's the only interesting thing in here.
Well, no.
Yeah.
So then you get the cartoon. So
Oh yeah, thank you for mentioning the cartoon. Yes.
the little boy is watching his iPad, like I say.
Hmm.
And so he is, and it's really, again, as I say it, I find myself really impressed by this particular thing, which is he is doing what we now do in this day and age of switching back and forth between the tabs. So he's watching a cartoon, but it's about rebels, so he doesn't want the stormtroopers who are in his house to know, and so he will switch over to a game
Yes.
when when the stormtroopers approach you, which I think is pretty funny now that in retrospect. But
No,
anyway,
excellent point.
so he is watching a cartoon that is called, I'm trying to find the name of it here, The Faithful Wookiee. And
Hmm.
it is the first official Star Wars cartoon written by Lucas and produced by Toronto animation firm Nelvana Limited, which was
Yes.
later produced Droids and Ewoks. So it's really not a bad little show. I mean, it's kind of weird animation style. I don't
It's very
particularly.
Euro. He wanted it
Yeah,
to look like Heavy Metal Magazine, like Mobius and stuff like that, and it does.
yeah,
It looks like something that you and I used to watch the Animation
right.
Celebration.
Yeah,
It looks like
exactly.
something you would have seen there.
But it
The
doesn't look
whole
like most of
special
the Saturday
stops.
morning cartoons. Yeah.
Right, no, it doesn't. The whole special stops and we watch this
This
cartoon.
story that introduces Boba Fett, and it has the voices of all of our main
Mhm.
cast of Luke, Leia, and Han, and there's just kind of a little story.
They are looking for a medallion that is rumored to be something that the Empire is wanting. And that medallion has mystical powers. And Luke is injured by the medallion. This is back when there was this notion that the Empire was going to be looking for magical stuff in the sense that we used to imagine that Hitler was like looking for the spear that pierced the side of Jesus and other
Mhm.
mystical hoodoo. And
Oh, the
so
Holy
there,
Grail.
yeah. The everybody's looking for this medallion. It makes Luke sick. Chewbacca and Boba Fett, this guy that they've met along the way, go into the city to find something to cure Luke with, and Darth Vader is secretly giving Boba Fett instructions saying, "Make them trust you, so that they'll lead you to the rebel
Right.
base."
Which, of course,
And
they
it's a it,
that C-3PO and R2-D2 see that in their screen. They have these, Big Brother screens that everybody can see what everybody else is doing, which I think is
super
interesting.
weird. Yeah, that's just it is. There's a throughout inside the cartoon and also inside the special, there's a narrative crutch that basically everybody can look at a screen and the narrative just switches over to that, even if it makes no sense to get,
For you to be able to
to
see that.
send for you to be able to see what's going on.
Right.
So yes, yeah, that cartoon's actually pretty cool, and you can
So
watch it on YouTube, by the way, just the
yeah, so
cartoon
it
by itself.
seems to me like it would have made sense. Like we could totally re-edit this program to be an hour-long thing where, hey, we meet Chewie's family for a few minutes, and oh hi, we're saying hi to all the other characters, and oh hey, Chewbacca's son is watching this awesome cartoon, and oh there's a couple acts, and that's it. You don't have to have an hour of the family just talking and being in their house. You know,
I agree.
I mean,
It's
it seems
it's
like it would have been fine.
it's thoroughly it's just hard to watch. It feels embarrassing for the people who put on the show. I think
It is
actually it should
embarrassing to
be
them.
a half-hour show, mostly the cartoon, with lead-ins involving the Han and Chewbacca
Right.
stuff, a little bit of the family,
But I'm
and
saying if
that's
they
it.
wanted to do a variety show, they could have also had some of the, the Cirque du Soleil style thing and the songs, whatever. They could have done that and had it be an hour, but it's an hour and 40 minutes, and the 40 minutes are literally 40 minutes of just grunting
Yeah.
by the
You're right. Yeah,
by
I'll
the
bet if you
waist.
take the musical numbers out and all that stuff and just present it as its own show, you'll wind up with about 35 minutes of material. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just mind-blowing. I look at stuff and I go, "Wow, this is teaching me something." Because people come back and they go, "Boy, Catwoman was the worst movie ever made." And I can say, "No, no. You have not
There
watched."
we half of the things we've done on this podcast.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Right. Yeah.
Um, we have never discussed anything on this podcast that is as difficult to watch as this movie. And
Yeah.
I think here's why I think it's really interesting and kind of important to history. It's not important to our listeners that they actually go watch it. But it is important to history, I think. And the reason why is it shows you that no matter how good your like work is, your oeuvre, right? You are still capable of making profoundly poor mistakes, or profoundly poor decisions.
Right.
Anybody, yeah.
Right. Well, and then these poor people who gets roped into doing it, like, Harrison Ford says he'd never even seen the thing, and then they asked him at the premiere for The Force Awakens how he'd feel about reprising his role for another potential Star Wars holiday special, and he said he'd kill himself. So I mean, all these people are like, not they're none of them are like, this is great. I'm glad I did this. Not one
Well, and
person.
and Carrie Fisher looks great. Of course, she looks fine. Mark Hamill looks weird. He's been given all kinds of makeup. I don't think it's related to his
No, it is.
legendary car accident.
It was,
Oh,
it was. It says, yeah, it says Mark Hamill's face was heavily made up as he was recovering from reconstructive surgery after the near fatal car accident. So yeah, he probably had a lot of like swelling in color, different colors,
that
whatever
could
going
be.
on.
He
Yeah.
looks like a painted doll,
Yeah.
and it's that's really unfortunate. Yeah. Okay. Wow. That by the way, legend has it that that accident is why Empire Strikes Back opens with the Wampa smashing Luke in the face,
Sure.
is
Yeah.
because then I mean Mark Hamill said this himself. He said that rumors of how badly his face was hurt have been exaggerated. However, that he did have scars, and the stuff that they do with his face in Empire took advantage of the fact that he had those scars. But he did look different. He had broken his left cheekbone and his nose
Mhm.
very badly. Like so, they had to reconstruct his nose using cartilage, from his ear. So it was a bad accident. Yes.
And then he got to do this. All was well.
Oh my God, this is a catastrophe. I
Yeah.
this yeah. So that's
That's
the Star
that's
Wars
pretty
holiday
much it.
special.
Mhm.
Yes, I appreciate you discussing this with me. I
I
think,
want my 2 hours back, or my
I'm
hour and a
really
half.
sorry that, of all the things that we could have spent a Friday evening, we could have gone out and looked at pretty lights, but
The
no.
only thing that makes up a little bit for it is that we went and saw the actual Star Wars movie yesterday, and we both enjoyed it very much.
Yes.
So, I'm not going to do an official endorsement only because I don't wanna spoil anything at all, but I did
Yeah.
enjoy that film very much.
That's my endorsement as well. I really loved the new film, and it's very strange to juxtapose that with the 1978 Star Wars Holiday Special,
But it makes you
and
appreciate that much more what good filmmaking is,
yeah,
'cause you're like, "Oh, yeah, this is what filmmaking
you can
is."
make this is what one bad idea after another becomes. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that, thank you very much, and I guess
Happy
I will talk
holidays
to
to
you.
everybody, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. Well, I think we'll are we back before? I can't remember if we're back before New Year, but if we're not,
We
then
might
Happy
have a
New Year.
couple miniature episodes, but
Yep.
we'll pretty much be back after the new year. So,
Alrighty.
so long, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.